If you're tired of losing games that you know you should have won, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to share 10 MLBB tips that most players either don't know or completely ignore. These aren't hero-specific tips and tricks, these are habits that separate average players from the ones who consistently climb to Mythic Immortal and beyond. Of course, there's no rank past Mythical Immortal at the time of making this, so we're talking about like 200, 300, 400 stars, etc. Anyways, watch until the end because the last few tips are the ones that high-rank players use every single game. And trust me, don't skim through this video. If you actually pay attention to every tip, you will 100% improve or at least learn something new after watching this, so given that you're not a pro scene player like Sanford. As my channel continues to grow, I can no longer personally coach every player who reaches out. Because of this, I am creating a brand called Zex's Coaching Team. And what I'm going to be doing is hiring coaches to help me coach. If you want coaching, it's still the same way. Link is in the description down below to my coaching info tab in the Discord server. But if you want to be a coach, all you have to do is click on the ticket box as well and state that you want to be a coach, and I will personally DM you or someone else from the coaching team. Anyways, let's get back to the video. Now for the first tip, I know you've heard this a million times, but you need to apply this. Look at your map every few seconds. You don't need to look at your map every 2.5, every 3 seconds, but you need to look at the map. You don't understand how much information you gather from looking at the map every couple seconds, and even in team fights or during clashes, when you look at the map, you're able to retain so much information. I can't tell you countless times how many times in pro scene games, I can see someone who's low HP enter a bush on the map that I wouldn't have seen on my screen, and I know to go into that bush because they're either recalling or trying to escape, or potentially set up an extra skill on 1 HP there to help their team win a fight. Sometimes you'll catch an enemy mage or a marksman who is trying to wait for the perfect moment once your team is stunned to ambush in these kind of situations, etc. Looking at the map will also help you to prevent getting ganked on a side lane. It will help you to understand what decisions you can make as a jungler. As a simple example, the enemy mid laner and the enemy roamer are on top lane and you are currently clearing your double green on bot lane. You know that the gank on bot lane is totally safe, or an invade on the enemy greens or big buff is totally safe due to the lack of pressure from the enemy roam mid. This is just a few examples of the thousands of decisions you can make from looking at the map. If you wonder why so many of the better players tend to make the best decisions most of the time, it is due to this factor. So please stop ignoring the aspect of looking at the map frequently. As for tip number 2, you need to stop fighting outnumbered. Obviously, we all like to be that Alucard that goes in 1v5 and gets a savage, but realistically, can you do it versus that enemy team comp? I'm not telling you right now to not take a 2 versus 1 because you're scared because they have 1 extra player, but in the sense that they have a lot of stuns, then you probably shouldn't. A perfect example would be playing Alucard, where you decide to go into a 1 versus 4 where the enemy has a Franco and a Badang. Do you actually think that you're going to survive when you're stun locked there? Absolutely not. But what if they have a Florin and they have something like Uranus? Then of course you're not going to care because there's no additional stuns there that can stop you. So of course, make the right decision, know your hero's limits, know what you can engage versus, but stop taking fights outnumbered if you don't feel comfortable doing it, and stop forcing engagements when you're not comfortable. This is a really important tip. The reason why my Alucard win rate is a 75 to 80% every season, even in solo queue, is because I really abuse this factor. Can I take that fight? Does he have the skill that will stop me from being able to take this fight, etc. Now, this is for my side laners out here. Tip number 3 is pushing lanes before objectives. If you're playing mid even as well, or if you're playing XP or gold, you need to clear your wave before you do any form of rotations. This is extremely important. The reason why high cutting and low cutting is so good on XP is because you get to rotate quicker and you have more time in between your waves. While cutting is a subcategory in this case, we are just talking about pushing your lane before objectives. But again, there's one small tip I want to add to my XP laners out there. Once you get your level 4, go to the objective if a fight is happening or is bound to happen. Don't clear your wave for level 4.5, be present at that objective contest so long as your team is ready to take it as well. Stop being that XP that clears the wave for level 4.5, or I'm going to come and find you and break into your... Sorry, we went a little bit off track there. My editor probably censored that out. Either way, my point is that you need to be present at those fights, but make sure you clear your wave if possible. So in the sense of doing turtle at the 2-minute mark, you should realistically not clear for 4.5. Be sensible. But in other cases, like you want to rotate to mid to get a potential gank off on the enemy mid when they go to fast clear and rotate, then yeah, clear your wave first. You don't want to give your enemy gold, you don't want to lose those minions, let's be real. But yeah, just a general tip that's super important. There's a lot more depth in this, of course. We can talk about subcategories. Let me know if you want me to go more in depth on these tips in the future. I'm just giving you general consensuses. My channel has a lot of information on all these kind of videos, lots of guides. Just go through my most popular or go to my playlist that I have. I have one for hero guides on MLBB and I have another one for general tips and tricks. So, you know, just go check out those playlists. Now, for the next tip, I want to talk about something that a lot of people don't understand, which is to stop going into places on the map where you do not have vision. In League of Legends, we understand the concept of not going into bushes or going into the fog because you know that there could be anyone there. Same concept applies here. You need to process that in MLBB, one person on low HP can bait you into 3 different enemies and you die for no reason. One person on high HP could be waiting in a bush that you didn't check and you're gonna die for no reason. Stop walking without purpose, stop walking without vision. If you really want to understand positioning and understand when you're able to walk into certain bushes, refer back to tip number 1 where you understand the map. If I'm trying to gank XP and I know that the enemy has 4 people on top lane, then I know realistically I am fine to walk into bushes on the bottom side of the map. But if I don't have vision, then I'm not fine to walk because anybody and their mom and their stepbrother or their aunt or their uncle or their grandma could be in that bush. Again, this is a very simple tip that is super crucial. The reason why you're seeing me average 1 to 2 deaths a game, unless if I'm playing a hero that forcefully needs to die to win fights, is because I am using this factor. Every decision I make comes from the map and understanding where the enemies could potentially be. Alright, as for the next tip, I like leaving some of the more beneficial ones in the middle because a lot of you guys like to just skip to the end or like whatever. We don't like that, okay? This tip is super important, which is that gold and kills do not win games. What actually ends up winning games is objectives. I understand that being level 15 with a 5,000 gold gap will make it easier for you to win the game, but if you didn't push a single turret in that time, if you didn't get a single lord in that time, then what is the purpose? Because you just give the enemy a lot of space and time to farm and catch up, because at the end of the game, when it gets to late game, at the end of the day, when it gets to late game, listen man, I don't have perfect speech, okay? But at the end of the day, when it gets to late game, there we go, what's gonna end up happening is that they're gonna catch up. So you need to try to end the game with that advantage. And the way you do it is by pushing turrets and by pushing objectives and getting those lords to push more turrets, which in turn allows you to get to the nexus and end the game. Now, a lot of you will argue that that's easier said than done, but it's really not that hard, chat, okay? All you need to do is if you kill the enemy XP, push their turret. If you kill the enemy jungle, take their buffs. If you kill the enemy mid, try to push mid. Kill the enemy gold, try to push gold. But now, little question for y'all. If you guys kill all 5 enemies, which turrets are the most important to push? Well, if you didn't push the mid one is the most important turret to push. After this, push everything else that you possibly can. Take as much space, take as much advantage as you possibly can. Most of my games that I win in solo queue, I end up having 40 to 50% push, because realistically, sometimes you cannot rely on teammates to push. If you get lucky with a good teammate who knows to push, congratulations. But if you don't get lucky, guess what? You gotta do it yourself, or you're never getting close to their nexus. It's just a basic concept to understand. As for tip number 6, stop fighting without analyzing your cooldowns. A lot of people don't fight around their cooldowns and understand that they can re-engage when they have their cooldowns back. I mean, this is a pretty basic concept as well, but a lot of people just don't have enough emphasis on it. If I am playing Alucard, I do not want to jump in when my cooldowns are off, aka my ultimate, etc. Because if I do, I'm probably gonna die. I'd rather back away from the fight, wait the extra 5 seconds, get my cooldowns back, and look for the moment to engage again, because realistically, I will have 50 to 100 times more value that way than I would without my cooldowns. Same concepts apply to mages. If you're playing Gord and you don't have your cooldowns, back away so that you're not able to get pressured by the enemy, but stay close enough that you're still able to help when your cooldowns are back. This is where positioning comes into play, and once you understand cooldown management, it's going to help you a lot with your positioning, because you'll know when you can play more aggressive and when you can play more safely. And of course, we'll talk about positioning in a second. Which positioning is going to be my bonus tip. As an assassin, the basic concept to understand about positioning is knowing the right moment to engage. As a marksman, it's about the safest spot to be in where you're still able to output maximum damage, aka free hitting, if you've ever heard that term before. As a mage, it's understanding how to stay at a distance where you're still able to throw your skills and get damage value, but never risk yourself dying. As an XP laner, positioning is knowing that either you need to get to the enemy backline to harass, or you need to be frontlining and making space for your backliners. And as a roamer, of course, same concept as XP in most cases. And as a jungler, positioning is always being in a spot where you're able to have impact based on your specific role, whether you're tank, jungle, or if you're fighter jungle or assassin jungle, but also positioning in the sense that you can never get pressured at an objective. So this is the honorable mention tip. If you stayed, you get this one as well. Again, all of these tips that I'm giving, there's so much more emphasis on other videos on my channel. Make sure to go check them out. Now, as for tip number 7, know who the real threat is. Usually the real threat could be, in theory, the Beatrix that nobody counters on your team, but when she's 1 in 10, is she really the threat, or is it the 9 in 5 Lancelot on the enemy team that is constantly cooking your backline and you're lucky you have a Franco who's suppressing him? My point is that you want to target down the enemy player who is the strongest. I've noticed this a lot with some roamers in my games as well, such as Francos who will only save their ultimate for me because they know that I am the most oppressive player on my team, right? I'm not trying to have an ego, is just the truth. Sometimes your randoms are not that good. Sometimes it's not going to be you and it's going to be your marksman and they will target them down, which means that you need to know who the real threat is and you need to put as much emphasis on them as possible. If you know that winning a team fight comes from the fact that their marksman is dead, their marksman needs to die at the start of every team fight, which means that your team and you should know to pressure the enemy marksman, and in doing so, you will win that fight. Try to target the threats or neuter them when you can. As an example, you can invade an enemy jungle and neuter him from early. Yes, he's going to still have impact later because of Retchery and being around his team and whatever, but you can definitely cut him down a lot and delay his early to mid game, or entirely kill his early to mid game and delay him to late game in terms of impact. You can do the same thing with every other lane in the game if you put enough emphasis on them. So try to know who the real threat is, who is the one that's going to cause the most amount of problems for your team based on their hero's archetype versus your team archetype, and neuter them. Pause. Now, as for the next tip, every single death should mean something. Remember earlier when I said I'll realistically have 1 to 2 deaths a game, unless if it's a game where I need to die? What was I talking about with that? As an example, if I go in on Lucas and I manage to kill the enemy marksman and mage, but I die afterwards, it is still a very good trade for my team, which we will realistically end up winning that fight due to the 4 versus 3 advantage, on top of the fact that both of their damage dealers are dead, right? This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You need to have a death that means something. In that case, I was talking about winning a team fight, but what about where you die and your team's able to push turrets? What about where you die, but your team's able to get the Lord? What about where you die, but you sacrifice yourself to get a huge team shutdown onto the enemy who is a problem, and you start getting your team to come back into the game? Every death needs to mean something. If it doesn't, review, learn, and honestly, improve. Because if you're dying for no reason, something needs to change, brother. As for the next tip, honestly, I'm gonna tell you, a lot of people say try to think 30 seconds ahead. I don't like that. So for tip number 9, we're gonna talk about thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead. If you're playing jungle, think about what your next 2 to 3 steps are after you complete a certain buff. If you're playing XP, what's your next step after you cut? If you're playing mage, what's your next step after you clear? If you're playing marksman, what's your next step after you clear your wave as well? Are you gonna rotate to do a double lane? Are you gonna take your gold crab, etc., right? Try to always think 2 to 3 steps ahead and try to process what the enemy would be thinking if they're thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead as well, but we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, think 2 to 3 steps ahead. Very, very important. Hey man, they do it in chess too, yeah? They do it in Pokemon Champions too, right? All these games that are more brainy and you have to think a lot more, they do it. MLBB is no different. As for tip number 10, ask yourself one question before every fight, which is what I was gonna say. If I am the enemy, what would I do? What does a Badang realistically want to do? What does a Yuzong want to do? What does a Lapu want to do? Let's talk about other things. What does a Yve want to do? What does a Gord want to do? What does a Minotaur want to do, right? Minotaur, Jesus Christ, bro. Cut that out, edit it up, please, or leave it in, I don't care. What does a Kufra want to do? What does a Lancelot want to do? You guys get my point, okay? Jesus Christ. My point is that every single hero in the game has a specific way they need to be played and a specific way to make them work. I can't waste my dash on Lancelot or else I kill off half of my kit, right? So because of that, you need to understand what the enemy wants to do and how you can counter it. For example, Lapu wants you to throw stuns at him when he's in his CC immunity. Don't. Lapu wants you to not burst him down and instead run away from him. Burst him down, bring a carry, etc. A lot of people don't understand that certain heroes in this game rely on certain factors. At the end of the day, every hero has a weakness and a strength. If you abuse the weakness, that hero doesn't get as much value. This is how you win games. Understanding that Lapu Lapu is not as good versus heroes like Carry due to the fact that Carry can completely shred him and doesn't care about his CC immunity, but he's better versus heroes such as Eudora that can also do some decent bursts, but he can CC immune their skill too. But of course, this doesn't always apply to countering. Like if I'm playing against a Benedetta, I know they want to cut the wave and rotate. So it's like, I have to understand that. If I were the enemy, what would I do? If you're missing, what would I be doing if I was you, if you're missing, right? This is why sometimes you'll watch my videos when I'm doing a live commentary and like, what are you doing there? Because obviously the better play to make was something entirely different and you should have been in that spot instead, right? It's just kind of a thing that you develop when you play pro scene enough and like, you know, scrims enough and all these kind of things. You kind of get to a point where you realize like, oh, like this guy should be there. But even if you guys aren't going to play to that degree, you should still understand at the minimum what the best play is for the enemy to make. And that's why I'm saying, if I was the enemy, where would I be? Very important thing to know, okay? If you don't know where the enemy is, try to predict where they are. This is how you eventually get better at predicting. You'll get some dopamine spikes from predicting that the enemy was there, blah, blah, blah. You'll enjoy the game more, but you'll also be improving. Anyways, those are all the tips that I wanted you guys to learn. If you learned something new, drop a like and let me know which tip surprised you the most. And if this video helps you win even one ranked game, I'd like to say it was worth watching for you. But again, comment down below if you guys have any additional tips or what you guys think. I will catch you guys in the next one.